Welcome back to Late Edition. I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington. Once again, we're joined by the former Clinton Chief of Staff, John Podesta. He's president of the Center for American Progress here in Washington, and Danielle Pletka, Vice President for Foreign and Defense Policy Studies at AEI, the American Enterprise Institute. John, is it a good idea for the United States to engage directly with Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, try to appeal to them to get their help in easing the crisis in Iraq?
Well, I think that they have interest in making sure that Iraq doesn't implode, and so I think we should engage with them and engage with those governments directly. It's not because they're going to do us any favors, or really probably even because they're going to do the Iraqi people or certainly the Iraqi government any favors. But they have interest in stability there, and I think until we find some regional players to try to put pressure on the government to get a political reconciliation there, and they're important in that, we're not going to make progress. That
was the conclusion of the Iraq Study Group as well, to get a dialogue going with both of these neighbors of Iraq, Syria, and Iran.
Well, it's not entirely clear to me what makes people believe that Bashar al-Assad or Mahmoud Ahmadinejad are seeking stability inside Iraq. The Iraq Study Group didn't present any evidence. I've been studying those countries a long time. I've never seen any evidence. The Iranians, intelligence shows us, are actually paying both sides in the Iraq crisis to foment chaos inside Iraq. They're paying the Sunnis and the Shia. So it seems to me that the idea that they're seeking stability and that they want to, quote, help out the United States, unquote, is a little bit ridiculous. But even if they were, I guess I would ask those who advocate this, what do you suggest we give up? This is a negotiation. What do you think we ought to give to the Iranians and to the Syrians in order to buy stability from them?
That's the point, John, that the Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice made in an interview in the Washington Post this week, that the compensation, in her word, to both Iran and Syria would be too high from the U.S. perspective. On the Iranian part, maybe going along and letting them enrich uranium and potentially develop a nuclear bomb. On the Syrian front, letting them have their way in Lebanon, for example. Those were her concerns.
Right. Well, that I think suggests that we're there kind of bargaining for the security in Iraq, and I think that's the kind of wrong paradigm. I think what the regional players and the regional security requires is that the parties who have a lot at stake, including the Iranians and the Syrians, get together with the United States so that we're not trying to bribe them into the deal. I agree that there's no way they're going to want to try to help us out of the mess that we've created there. But I think that, as I said, they do have their own security issues that should put pressure on the Iraqi government to try to create and go back and do what the government said they were going to do a year ago.
James Baker and Lee Hamilton, basically they concluded, you know what, challenge them, test them, see if they're ready to cooperate, and if they're not, then the whole world will see that. Go ahead and start this dialogue with Syria and Iran. You're smiling.
What I love about James Baker is he's the man of 1,000 chances. I mean, how many times has he himself been to Syria to beg cooperation from Assad's father when he was Secretary of State, and now believing that they are somehow going to play the game with us in Iraq? You know, this is eternal optimism on their part based on absolutely no factual information. This was their predisposition going into the Iraq Study Group. It was no surprise that that was what came out. And don't get me wrong, I have no objection to telling these guys how it is. We've done that before. Former Deputy Secretary of State Richard Armitage went and talked to Bashar al-Assad. The bottom line is they're not going to do it because their interest is in destabilizing Iraq and hurting the United States and stopping democracy.
Well, you know, as long as we keep them out of the limits, never talk to them, stick our head in the sand on that regard, I think they're going to continue to do that.
We did talk to them.
And you know, they'll continue to do exactly what I think that, you know, we're predicting the worst outcome, but I think we're actually creating a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Here's what the president said this week at the Pentagon. Listen to this, John.
If we lose our nerve, if we're not steadfast in our determination to help the Iraqi government succeed, we'll be handing Iraq over to an enemy that would do us harm.
You know, I think that he puts it in those terms. I think he just, but that is not a strategy. That's, you know, I think that George Ball, I think in 1964, said the political party that seems to be losing is going to be the party that tries to keep adding more fuel and escalating. And I think that until the president comes to grip with the fact that his strategy is not working and gets the country on a different path, all the macho rhetoric in the world isn't going to produce anything.
You think he's going to reject, when all is said and done, he delivers his big speech, the Iraq Study Group's recommendations?
I think he will, at the end of the day, reject those recommendations because they are, in short, a recommendation to exit Iraq slowly, not as quickly as Senator Reid and Mrs. Pelosi have suggested, but nonetheless, they are a recommendation to get out by the end of next year without seeking victory. The word victory doesn't even appear with relation to American forces in Iraq.
They talk about
even Henry Kissinger's given up on it. So, I think that when the public has gotten to the point where they actually are trying to cope with reality, it's time the president get there.
Listen to this. Hold on a second. Listen to this. The president and the vice president effusive in their praise of Donald Rumsfeld on Friday at a farewell ceremony in his honor.
On his watch, the United States military helped the Iraqi people establish a constitutional democracy.
Don Rumsfeld is the finest Secretary of Defense this nation has ever had.
What do you think?
I think finest Secretary of Defense this nation has right up there with mission accomplished. I think it will, I think history will judge that for what it is.
I hate that sort of jingoistic response. Don Rumsfeld was a man with a really important vision about the transformation of the American military. It doesn't happen to be the vision that was right for these times, in my view. I don't think that we did a good job in Iraq under his watch. But that being said, to dismiss him out of hand rudely is completely unnecessary. He served his country well.
Hillary Clinton going to run for president?
I think so. I would say probably 90% chance.
Are you ready to support her?
Personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, personally, I'm a big admirer of Senator Clinton's. There's a big field, a strong field, and I think she'll be challenged for the nomination, but she's got the strength, I think, and ideas to move the country forward.
You have a Republican favorite, Danielle?
I certainly don't. I think the Republican Party is lacking in ideas. They got their butts kicked in the elections, and it's a lesson to everybody to go back and look at what helped us win in the 90s and do that again.
Danielle Pletka, John Podesta, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks.
And coming up next,